The lights had dimmed in the green room. Outside, the muffled energy of the charity gala hummed like a distant current. Clinking glasses, polite laughter, the echo of a jazz piano. Inside, it was quiet. Almost too quiet. Drake leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the patterned carpet. "You ever wonder," he said softly, "if God actually cares?" Elon glanced up from his phone, caught off guard by the tone. "Cares about what?" Drake didn't look at him. "About all this. What we build, what we break, the things we chase. You ever wonder if he's watching and just shaking his head?" Elon's lips parted, but nothing came out. He looked at Drake the way a man looks at a mirror that suddenly starts asking questions. Then, after a long pause, he said quietly, "My son asked me something last night." Drake turned toward him, eyes narrowing slightly. He said, "Dad, do you think God gets lonely when we stop talking to him?" Elon let the silence hang. He didn't smile, didn't blink, just looked down at his hands. Drake's voice cracked, almost a whisper. "And what did you say?" "I didn't," Elon said. "I just held him." He took a breath, but his throat tightened. "I think I realized I've been building things so tall I forgot to look up." The air in the room felt heavy now, like the truth had just sat down between them. Drake rubbed his palms together slowly. "You think he notices?" he asked. Elon's eyes lifted. "God?" Drake nodded. "I think," Elon said slowly, choosing each word like it was made of glass. "I think God notices when we drift, but he never stops waiting for us to come back." Drake looked down, the corner of his mouth twitching like he might say something, but didn't. Then Elon leaned in, his voice almost breaking. "My son said something else. He said, 'God just wants you to come back to him, Dad.' And I didn't know I had drifted so far." Drake's jaw clenched. "Funny," he muttered. "All this money, all these lights, and it's a kid who says the one thing none of us want to admit." He turned toward Elon fully now, face bare, raw. "But come back to what? To church? To religion? Or to something deeper?" Elon didn't answer. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was only the quiet hum of the hallway beyond, the fading echo of applause. And then Drake asked, even softer now, "Do you think he ever stops calling our name?" Elon looked at him, eyes glassy. "I think the silence we feel," he whispered, "might be him, still whispering. We just stopped listening." And right then, as Drake leaned back in his seat, looking away to blink something back, a deeper question began to form in the quiet space between them. One neither had dared say out loud yet, but it was coming. And when it did, it would change everything. Drake stared at the floor like it held some kind of answer. But all it offered was silence, the kind that feels too loud when your heart is wrestling with something unspoken. Elon shifted in his chair. He wasn't used to these kinds of conversations. Not backstage, not with someone like Drake, and certainly not about God, but something about the way Drake asked, the rawness in his voice. It pulled something from a place Elon had buried for too long. "You ever pray?" Drake asked suddenly, eyes still fixed downward. Elon hesitated. "Not in the way most people think. I don't kneel, I don't say fancy words, but sometimes, when I'm with my son, and he falls asleep on my chest, I just close my eyes and ask, 'Are you still there?'" Drake nodded slowly, like he understood that kind of prayer. The quiet kind, the desperate kind, the kind you whisper when nobody's watching, and you don't even know if anyone is listening. "I used to pray like that," Drake said, "when I was younger. Before the shows, before the headlines, before I thought I had to be something more than just a soul." Elon looked at him. What stopped you? Drake swallowed hard. Fame, he said, almost ashamed. It's like the louder people cheer for you, the harder it is to hear God. That hit Elon deep. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, mirroring Drake's earlier posture. My son told me something once. We were in the desert. No signal, no distractions, just stars. He said, it's easier to hear God out here because he doesn't have to shout. Drake blinked slowly. That's beautiful. Yeah, Elon said quietly. And painful. They both sat there, men who had climbed so high the air had grown thin, only to find that the things that mattered most weren't at the top of the mountain, but somewhere they had left far behind. Do you think God ever stops chasing us? Drake asked, almost like a child. Elon shook his head slowly. I think he never left. We just stopped turning around. That sat between them like a fragile truth, and neither of them dared touch it. Then Drake spoke, voice rough, low. So what do we do, man? What do we do when we realize we've spent so much time running towards something, only to find we were running away from someone? Elon didn't answer right away. He closed his eyes as if searching for something deeper than intellect, something that couldn't be solved with logic. Finally, he said, maybe we stop running. Maybe we just sit still long enough to be found. Drake turned toward him slowly, eyes narrowing as another question formed, heavier than the last. But what if we don't know how to be found anymore? Elon's breath caught in his throat, because in that moment, he realized he didn't know the answer either. The room was too still now, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Drake exhaled slowly, eyes glossy but unreadable. I don't think people get how loud it is in here, he said, tapping the side of his head. The voices, the expectations, the regret. Everyone sees the cars, the stages, the lights, but inside, it's just echoes, and I can't tell which ones are mine anymore. Elon nodded, not because he had the answer, but because he understood the weight of that silence. I've spent years, Elon said, engineering things that move the world forward, but I don't think I ever stopped to ask if I was moving toward God or away from him. Drake looked at him, something tightening in his jaw. Is that even possible? To move forward and drift at the same time? Elon's voice softened. I think that's how most of us get lost. We think progress means purpose, but sometimes we're just running faster in the wrong direction. Drake let those words settle, then rubbed his eyes and asked, do you think God's disappointed in us? The question hovered like a ghost, too sacred, too sharp. Elon looked away. I don't know. Maybe he's just heartbroken. That answer hit harder than either of them expected. Drake leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. You know, I had this dream once. I was back home. No music, no fame. Just me, my mom, and this tiny church down the street we used to walk past. I never went in, but in the dream, I did. He paused, voice shaky now. And in the dream, Jesus was there. But he didn't say anything. He just sat next to me. Didn't preach, didn't point out my mistakes. Just sat and listened. Elon turned to him slowly, visibly moved. What did you say to him? Drake shook his head. I don't remember. I just remember feeling known, like I didn't have to be anything but a son. The word hung there, son, like a whisper from a deeper place. Elon's eyes welled up. That's what my boy calls me back to. Not the engineer, not the billionaire, just Dad. And maybe that's how God sees us too. Not for the things we build or break, but for the child in us that still longs to be held. Drake's voice trembled. But what if we don't feel worthy of that anymore? And Elon, who had once stood on the edge of space, who had launched rockets and stared at stars, looked at him with the most human expression he'd ever worn. "I think that's when grace begins," he whispered. "Not when we earn it, but when we finally admit we never could." And just as Drake was about to speak again, a knock came at the door, reminding them that the outside world still existed. But neither moved, because something deeper was rising between them. A question neither had said yet, but both were aching to ask. The knock came again, soft, polite, forgettable. Then a muffled voice. 5 minutes until stage. Neither of them answered. The room remained untouched by time, like God himself had drawn a curtain between them and the world. Drake leaned forward again, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. "I've spent my whole life performing," he murmured, "even when I wasn't on stage, for my mom, for my fans, for people who said I'd never be more than a mixtape rapper from Toronto." He looked up, eyes red. "But I don't know who I am when the music stops." Elon swallowed hard. That hit closer than he wanted to admit. "I know what that feels like," he said. "My whole life has been about fixing things, solving problems, inventing futures. But my son, he doesn't want a savior. He just wants a father." Drake blinked slowly, as if something in that sentence cracked a window he didn't know was closed. "You ever wonder," he asked, "if that's how God feels too? Like maybe he doesn't need worship as much as he just wants to walk with us again?" Elon didn't reply, not with words, but something in his face changed, like a wall quietly lowered. Drake continued, his voice softer now. "Maybe God's greatest sadness isn't that we broke the rules, but that we stopped coming to him when we did." That silence returned, the kind that stretches between souls, not sentences. And then Elon, staring at the carpet, said something barely audible. "My son told me he saw God in a dream." Drake raised his eyebrows. "He said God didn't look like a man, not really, more like light, but not blinding, gentle, warm. And he said God spoke without words." Drake leaned in. "What did he say?" Elon looked at him, tears welling. "I've missed you." That broke something in both of them, not like a crash, but like a slow release, a dam cracking from the inside. Drake covered his mouth. "Man." And Elon just nodded. "My son woke up crying. Not from fear, from love. He said he didn't want to wake up, because for the first time he felt home." Drake leaned back, hand over his heart like he was steadying something. "I don't think I've ever felt that. Not even with all the awards, the people, the money. I've never felt home." Elon said nothing. He just looked at him, and then looked down, like the boy inside him was whispering something only his heart could hear. And then Drake asked slowly, like each word hurt, "How do we get back there? How do we come home when we don't know where it is anymore?" Elon opened his mouth to speak, but someone else did first, a voice neither of them expected, soft, young, from behind them. "Maybe it's not a place." They turned, and standing in the doorway was Elon's son. Elon's son stood quietly in the doorway, his small frame outlined by the soft hallway light. No one had heard him come in, no one had called for him. But there he was, like a question that walked in just when silence became too heavy. Drake blinked. "Hey, little man." The boy smiled gently, then stepped inside without a word, walking up to his father and slipping his small hand into Elon's. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't rehearsed. It was pure. "Did you hear what we were saying?" Elon asked softly. The boy nodded. "You were talking about going home." Drake tilted his head. "You said it's not a place?" The boy looked at him with a calmness far beyond his years. I think home is when you remember who you really are. Neither man spoke. I told Daddy, the boy continued. God said something in my dream, but I didn't tell him everything. Elon looked at him, brows drawing together. There's more? The boy nodded again, then climbed onto the seat beside Elon. He said, Tell your dad he doesn't have to keep building towers to reach me. I'm already with him. I always have been. Drake's eyes welled up. That's deep. The boy turned to him. God said something for you too. Drake froze. His voice dropped. What did he say? The child looked into his eyes. He said, I still remember the little boy who sang to me in his room. I never stopped listening. Drake broke. No sound, no theatrics, just tears, quiet, raw, real. He turned away, covering his face, ashamed of how exposed he suddenly felt. I used to do that, he whispered, before all of this, when it was just me and a beat-up keyboard. I'd make songs, not for charts, just for God. Elon placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Maybe he misses that boy too. The boy looked up at both of them, innocence cloaked in something sacred. You don't have to be famous to be loved. God's love doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It waits for you to be real. A long pause. Drake looked at the boy like he was staring at a version of himself he'd forgotten existed. Do you talk to God a lot? The boy smiled. I don't talk to him. I talk with him. Elon watched his son, awe and tenderness in his eyes. And how do you know it's him? The boy shrugged. Because when he talks back, it doesn't sound like anyone else. It feels like love, but quiet, like when you hug someone and don't need words. For a while, no one spoke. The air had shifted. Not lighter, not heavier, just still. As if something eternal had touched the moment and left its fingerprints on every breath. And then Drake, voice fragile, asked the question he had buried for years. Do you think he still wants me? The boy looked up slowly and gave an answer no adult could have given. Drake's question floated in the air like a leaf unsure whether to fall or fly. Do you think he still wants me? The boy didn't answer right away. He just looked at Drake, really looked, with the kind of stillness that doesn't come from understanding the world, but from not being afraid of it. Then he whispered. He never stopped. Drake's lips parted, but nothing came out. His chest rose, then fell, slowly, like something inside him was finally exhaling for the first time in years. The boy leaned toward him. He wants the you that cries in the dark, the you that wonders if it's too late, the you that sings when no one listens. That's the part of you he's been waiting for. Drake wiped his face, but the tears kept falling. Why would God want someone who keeps messing it up? And now it was Elon who spoke, voice thick with emotion. Maybe because love isn't about what we deserve. Maybe love is what shows up, even when we run from it. The room held a deep hush, the kind you don't want to break, because somehow you know God is standing right in the center of it. Drake looked at Elon's son with something close to reverence. Can I pray with you? The boy reached out and took his hand. You don't have to say the right words. You just have to mean them. So they sat there, Drake, Elon, and a child who hadn't read a single book on theology, but somehow carried more truth than all the volumes combined. No stage, no cameras, no applause, just silence and God. After a while, Drake whispered something so soft it barely had breath. I want to come back. Elon's son nodded. He's already holding the door open. Tears welled again. But this time, They didn't fall from shame. They fell from hope. Drake looked at Elon. You said you didn't know how far you'd drifted. I didn't, Elon replied, until I realized I wasn't alone in the desert. I just wasn't listening. Drake looked at the boy again. How do you hear him? The boy smiled. Turn down the world and sit still long enough. For a long moment they all sat in that quiet. No answers, just presence, and somehow that was enough. Finally, Elon stood and placed a hand on Drake's shoulder. Let's stop building towers, he said softly, and start walking back together. Drake nodded, eyes full of something new. Not fame, not fear, but faith. As they walked toward the door, the boy lingered behind for a second. He looked back into the room they were leaving, and he whispered, like a secret to the stillness, God, thank you for waiting. Then he closed the door gently behind him, not to shut something out, but to finally come home.